At the end of the 1988 Summer Olympics in Seoul, South Korea, Karch and his American teammates had just finished off the Soviet Union in 4 games to capture the men's volleyball gold medal. The greatest player in the world always made the biggest plays, often hearing his father Laszlo's voice in his head, "Rise and think, Karch, rise and think." It was the second time Karch had won gold, but this one over the Soviets was particularly sweet. Karch, you see, was an American because Laszlo had left Hungary after taking part in the 1956 Hungarian Revolution against the Soviets. What goes around comes around. I'm a Venice, California-born, Los Angeles-based sports fan, one that has played, coached, announced, and promoted sports my whole life. My love affair with sports started in my own backyard and has led me to this podcast. Thanks to the support of the Amateur Athletic Union in East Bay, I'm excited to bring you Sports Stories with Denny Lennon. Hello, sports historians. Welcome to the audio-video podcast episode number 39 of Sports Stories with Denny Lennon. It's the first of our 5-part series on the greatest volleyball player of all time, the 3-time Olympic gold medal winner, and the current head coach of the USA Women's National Team. Yep, you heard that right. Impressive, huh? There's so much more. Karch has so much success. In fact, we have decided to call this series a Karch July. And thank God this particular July has 5 Thursdays in it. By the way, that's yet another record that Karch has set. He becomes the first Sports Stories guest to have 5 episodes in a series. The man is a machine. That Hungarian Revolution in 1956 was the backdrop for one of the most famous Olympic Games ever played, Hungary versus the Soviet Union in water polo. At those Melbourne Summer Games, blood in the water they called it, well worth a search. Karch addresses his dad's role in that student uprising, which is an incredible story, along with so much more in this whole series. But before we go much further, we need to say hello to the producer for the top video podcast in the Centinela Adobe corridor, the director of the SSDL 5 slate of shows on YouTube, and the winner of the 2018 AAU President's National Leadership Award for Outstanding Service, my quarantine partner for life, Christine Jimbo.
Hi, everybody. I feel like my titles list gets longer each time, too.
Yeah, they do.
Okay, just making sure
looking
that's...
for those.
I'm just looking for the pay raise that goes along with it.
Yeah, we'll double your pay.
Thank you. I'll look for it in my next paycheck. Okay, so I'm here to remind you to get to our social media sites. You can get to all of our social media by hitting the website at sportstoriespodcast.com. And an easy search is Sports Stories with Denny Lennon. That's Denny like the restaurant, Lennon like the Beatle. And I also want to tell you that we are showing our podcasts on a new platform, the High School Narrative. And you can get there by thehsnarrative.com. And so we're distributing some of our content in their platforms, and we think they're a really kind of fun partner that's going to do some good.
No doubt. Also want to encourage you to visit our East Bay store. We got some gear there. We'll be loading up more gear as time goes by.
And I encourage you, if you're not a huge fan of the muscle tees, email us at info@sportstoriespodcast.com and tell us what kind of clothes you want to see on there.
We put that on. That's the Box Cobbler series.
Right.
Yep.
Hats, shoes, whatever you think you want to see on that site. Send us an email.
Let us
know. We'll get that up there.
Please follow me on Twitter at SportsStoriesDL. Besides plenty of top-level tweets, my Twitter account is where the voting will take place for the matchups of the first ever East Bay 74-28 shootout. Well, if you don't know what that is, you can catch up on my Twitter, or you can read my blog, or any of our social media accounts. We'll be announcing that projected start of July 6th on that one. It's going to be good. This interview was quite special for me. I certainly had known Karch, who's 4 years older than me, not only because I was a volleyball and Olympic Games fan, but I had teamed with Karch about 15 years ago. Yeah, I teamed with him. It wasn't in volleyball. It was in a promotional tour. We traveled around and promoted the sport of beach volleyball. I had a first-hand look at how the greatest of all time works, and it was impressive to say the least. It was also mind-boggling to watch how the rest of the volleyball world reacted to him. I want to make sure I note here what a nice man Karch is, always thoughtful and kind to those who came into contact with him. In case I haven't supported the idea that Karch is the greatest volleyball player of all time, let's consider just a couple of the highlights. He was a CIF high school volleyball champ while playing in California in high school at Santa Barbara High School. He was a 4-time All-American and a 3-time NCAA champ at UCLA. His teams went 124-5. All right, he's a 3-time Olympic volleyball gold medal winner, 2 indoor, 1 on the beach, only player to win gold at both. He was named the FIVB's best player of the 20th century. Okay, that's pretty definitive. FIVB is the sanctioning body of all of volleyball throughout the world. 6-time AVP most valuable player. The AVP is the Pro Domestic Tour of Beach Volleyball. He has a record 148 wins. That means he won the tournament. 148 wins over 28 seasons. He played until he was in his mid-40s and was still dominating. I'm leaving out so much, but it is certainly safe to say he transcended his sport the way Jordan and Tiger transcended theirs. In this first installment, we hear about Laszlo in Hungary and his parents moving to Santa Barbara. We hear about Karch in his youth. We also hear about his time at Santa Barbara High School playing for the one and only Rick Olmsted. So now it's time for part 1 of our 5-part Karch July. From the USA Volleyball National Team Center in Anaheim, California, here's our Sports Stories interview with the greatest volleyball player ever, Karch Karch. Please note this interview was recorded on January 17th, 2020. You know, I'm not sure when we first kind of like bumped in or got to know one another, but something I found kind of fun recently, I was duping over a lot of old videos. And do you remember how we used to run that backyard volleyball tournament in Venice? We used to run in a series of backyards.
Yes, I do remember that.
Yep, and we made a big deal out of it, of course, being Lennon's. So we would do a day before inside the VBC, and I did this fake phone call, a la Bob Newhart style, pretending that you were calling in, and I said, Karch, who? I'm sorry, but the tournament's full. Oh, yeah.
I like that. Fantastic.
Sorry, we don't have room for you, Karch. So I was going to do this in kind of like a chronological order,
okay,
if you're good with that. And one of the things I found interesting that I think...
And what's the basic theme
we're just going to
your
tell
series here?
The basic theme is we're telling unique and uplifting sports stories.
Okay.
And then putting some historical and social context to it.
Okay, great.
Yeah, and so that's what we've been doing with our guests, and we're looking forward to doing that.
Hopefully I can add to that a little.
We're going to try to have a Karch July.
All right. Whoa.
Yeah.
I think good month this year.
I think the story starts around, is the way I was looking at it, in the 56 in the Hungarian National Revolt. Like your father was involved in that, huh?
Yeah. He was 21 years old at the time. He was a college student and living in Budapest, which is the capital of Hungary. And it was a really exciting time for Hungarians because for many years they had, especially after World War II, they had essentially been a puppet country, a puppet government of the Soviet Union. And they had never had their own elections, gotten to pick their own legislators and representatives and representative government. So as he was one of tens of thousands of students who started a peaceful protest to demand that. And the Soviet Union held back. And the world was watching this unfold. And I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it all over here. It was a really exciting time for Hungarians. For about a 10-day, 2-week period, they thought they were going to go from a total dictatorship controlled by another country to taking back ownership of their own country. Right. And so he would walk through the neighborhood every day and when you live in a totalitarian state, even if it's controlled by another country, everybody keeps an eye. The government and its agents keep an eye on everybody. So his block, as every block did, had basically a spy who would report the goings and comings of anybody in the neighborhood. So he would walk every day to these peaceful protests. Upward of 100,000 students and people would come out to these. And every day he would look up because he knew which apartment this person lived in, and he could see this agent keeping an eye on people, but looking through the slit in the curtain, because the agent at this point doesn't know if he's going to be thrown out. The existing puppet regime is now in danger of losing their power, maybe getting removed from the country, or if the protests turn violent, it could be worse. And so my dad could see his goings and comings being tracked every day. Wow. At some point, about 2 weeks in, this was late October, early November of 1956, the Soviets decided, we've had enough of this. We're sending in our tanks and we're going to crush this thing. And that's when he knew he had to leave, because his choices were stay, be tortured and executed, or leave, because he knew he'd been tracked, and he was clearly and proudly joining these peaceful protests, these student protests.
Wow.
So he had to escape and say goodbye to his family, his younger sister. Run at nighttime. I think one time he told me about a lot of little cafes, or more like trattorias, like little family restaurants, would have the restaurant in the downstairs and their living quarters upstairs. And of course, Hungarians looked out for each other. So he's running toward the border. At times, he would be hiding up above, and look through the floorboards and see military people coming through looking for anybody who was on the run.
My goodness.
But he eventually made it through, had to run through minefields, and he did have a rifle. A lot of the students, while it was peaceful, they were afraid that they were going to get attacked, so they carried arms sometimes. So he made it to the Austrian border, turned in his weapon, and eventually ended up in this country. Got a scholarship from the Lutheran Church. I think it was like a $1,000 to go to Wayne State University in Detroit. Eventually transferred to University of Michigan. Okay. Got his undergrad degree there, his master's in civil engineering, met my mom, most importantly of all, and then got eventually his medical credential.
Wow, that's a lot for a 21, and then
to leave your family behind.
Leave all that behind.
And part of it was, this is how brutal the regime was, they would let his mom come to visit us in the 60s, but his dad was still valuable to them as a worker, so they didn't let him come visit until he was retired.
Unbelievable.
So that was the first time he got to see his dad. Was, probably 15, 17 years later.
Unreal. I find it interesting, the intersection of athletics, and in particular the Olympics, and history, because what was only a couple months after that in Melbourne was when the water polo, Hungary and Russia had that battle in the pool. Yeah. And they had to cancel the game, I think, after the crowd kind of turned against the Soviet Union's team.
You bring it up and I'm getting more goosebumps. There's a great movie, and I'm forgetting what it is. It's a documentary. It's something about fury. I've got to look it up. I might remember it as we're talking. But anyway, Freedom's Fury.
Freedom's Fury.
So I would recommend it to people. At the same time this was going on, and my dad was involved in, as tens of thousands of mostly college students were also involved in these protests. The Hungarian water polo team had to go in hiding in the hills because they didn't know what was going to happen here.
Wow.
And the backstory there is the Hungarian water polo team was the best in the world. Yeah. Hungarians are really good at some water sports, especially the the swim medleys. They have a lot of people who swim all 4 strokes really well. They're just a water-loving people, great rivers and all of that there.
They were the defending gold medal champs, I think, in
they
water
were
polo.
the best in the world. So, but unfortunately, the Soviet Union called the shots in Hungary, and they said they forced the Hungarian water polo team, the best team in the world, to open their practice and everything about their program to the Russian team, to the Soviet Union team, and just said, we don't care if you don't like it. We are sending our team, and they get to watch everything you do, and then they would copy it and do it every afternoon. So clearly, the Hungarians weren't too happy with this, being forced to teach their oppressors to be great at water polo. So then they get to Australia, and there's so much commotion and chaos in Hungary. The Hungarian team didn't know what was going to result. Some of them decided when they got to Australia that they would never go back because they were afraid of facing the same thing that my dad
and
and
Australia
lots of people
had some expats there, I think.
Yes. So they ended up, some people decided never to come back, but they ended up having an epic water polo battle, and there's a famous shot. You could find it on by doing a quick search of the Hungarian water polo player coming out of the water.
Took a shot.
And blood just pouring down his face. The pool turned pink because the Hungarians were like, there is no way. These guys and their government, not these guys, their government forced us to teach them everything we know. We are not going to let them.
Fans came down heavy on the Russians there.
And so they ended up winning, which was awesome. But it was a period of time where it's phenomenal that they even won, because while they were hiding in the hills, they didn't have a pool. They're just sitting in a hotel trying to work out with no pool and none of their normal equipment as they went into hiding. So they went for weeks without proper training and still figured out a way to win. I think it was in late November, early December of that Olympic year. But it was the most epic water polo battle in history because of the governments and the politics behind it.
No doubt about it.
We interrupt this podcast to bring you a commercial.
Sports Stories with Denny Lennon aims to bring its subscribers interesting, unique, and uplifting stories. You can find us at sportstoriespodcast.com. We drop audio, video podcasts every Thursday and go live at 5 on YouTube 4 nights a week. That's Sports Stories with Denny Lennon.
And now back to our interview.
So your father obviously is influenced by all of that, and so you're born, I think, in 1960 or so, Michigan, but you come out west, and then about 6 years old is when he starts to play a little volleyball with you, because he was a player on his junior national team.
Yep, he was a good player in Hungary, and the sport at that time had a reasonable following in Hungary, and so he played on the junior national team. And when he came to this country, he kept playing, even though there weren't tons of places to play in Michigan, but he kept it going. He was a member of the Ann Arbor YMCA team, like the adult team that would go to USA Volleyball Adult Nationals, and they would do all right there, and they would play against club teams from some of the universities like Michigan State. And so part of our time together was he worked really hard in medical school. He would spend just the whole week he'd be buried with things, but he kept his volleyball going. So early in Saturday mornings, maybe 4 a.m., something like that, he and I would jump in the car, really cold winters in Michigan, and drive all over the state to Saginaw and Flint and Kalamazoo and just go to these Saturday tournaments. And I would follow him around and be with his team, just kind of tag along. A lot of times they were playing, so I might bump the ball against the wall to myself, or a lot of those old gyms have the indoor tracks that run around the upper level. They're really cool, with the bank at the curves. And so I would just goof around there, and his teammates and he would play a little pepper with me. And then eventually, when he finished medical school, he had what you do, even still out of med school, you do your year of internship, your first year beyond, and you start specializing in what form of medicine you're going to end up being a doctor at. So he and my mom stumbled upon Santa Barbara, fell in love with it, made a beeline to the just looked it up in the phone book. Where's the nearest hospital? I'm going to apply here to see if I can do an internship. And he applied.
And that's what brought him out.
And they were just kind of driving through town, exploring California. And they fell in love with Santa Barbara and just applied, got it. And so for that 1 year, he got his first consistent taste of beach volleyball and fell in love. Well, they fell in love with Santa Barbara.
Sure.
We all did. I was only 6. It's easy for me to fall in love with
Being able to
the
go to the
beach and all of that
Yeah.
stuff. So that was my second grade year. And so he would go down to East Beach every weekend, even though he was working 80, 90, 100-hour weeks as an intern. But again, that was our family time together, was on the weekends. And we'd bump it back and forth. Eventually spent some more time back there because we went back to Michigan for residency, but spent some more time there. First time I ever played on a court was when I was 9 against my dad. He had a lot of good friends that he knew there, and picked the best player who was willing to play with us and put that best player with me to help me out. Because it was, this is at a time when there are no small courts, low nets, or anything like that. So just playing on an adult court. 9 years old, that's the first time I remember playing. I played with a guy who was really well known in East Beach circles. He was the unofficial, quote, mayor of East Beach, Bill Conway. His name was Seaway, and he was a great AA player. And so got to play with them. Eventually, my dad and I played in our first tournament at 11 years old at Corona Del Mar, and then kept going from there. But some great times. So he was my first teammate, my first partner for 4 or 5 years of actual competition in volleyball.
There's some level of osmosis, I think, that takes place too. I just viewed it in different sports, but I think when you're really young like that and you hang around and you get modeled in front of you, not only good technique but good players, which you're automatically drawn to, but just how people love the sport.
Yeah,
there's something about that, I think, when you're really young, that'll cement in you.
There was no money in volleyball. There was Olympic indoor volleyball, but there was no beach volleyball in the Olympics yet. So there was really nothing, no extrinsic reward to play for. So you're right. Everybody who was playing those weekend tournaments, and in those days it was all day Saturday and all day Sunday, and people couldn't get enough of volleyball.
Couldn't get enough. Go
to Playa del Rey, where Pete Field and Gene Popko would run their tournaments, and it'd be like 128 or more teams. Wow. And but everybody was in it just to get better, to try to win the next game, to get a rating, maybe get your B rating, and eventually work up
the ladder
to try to get your AAA rating. But you're right. I think one of the things that turned out to be a real advantage for me, even though I didn't know it at the time, was there was no club volleyball, no junior volleyball. That turned out to be great because when I was 12, nobody, and we were playing in tournaments, we were only playing grown men, and no grown man that I know of wants to lose to a 12-year-old kid. So they were not holding back against me. And so, A, they were tough on me because there's no way they want to lose to a 12-year-old kid. Their friends are going to heckle them for the next year.
That's right.
B, when you see adults playing, you see them doing it close to the way it should be done, as opposed to other 12-year-olds who are just learning and flailing around. And so I got to see a lot of what it should look like, which helped me. They were models for me, and also helped me just learn to anticipate and read the game because I got a lot more chances at seeing what it would look like all through my career. But the average 12-year-old doesn't get to see that now because she or he, they're playing against their own age group, and everybody's just trying to figure things out so they don't get as many chances to see what it should look like and to learn how to anticipate what comes from somebody who plays the way it should look like.
So by the time you get to Santa Barbara High School, you're you've developed your skills, as has your best buddy John Hanley.
Yeah.
Right, and somehow you get Rick Olmsted over there to take over the program.
Yeah.
Yep. And Rick said something to the effect of coaching Karch and John. He threw John in there, of course, and he said was both the best and the worst thing that could have happened to me. It was the best because these guys were so good and they worked so hard, and we had great success. It was the worst because nobody worked like they did once they left, and it drove me out of my mind.
Yeah. I love Coach Rick. We loved having him as our high school coach there. At Santa Barbara High School. In those days, I can't even remember now, Santa Barbara, I should know this, but I don't. In those days, it was 3 years of high school and 3 years of middle school. So we played as 10th, 11th, and 12th graders. And his intensity was phenomenal, Coach Rick. His hunger to see us do as well as we could possibly do, but probably most of all, he instilled in us just a crazy work ethic. Not that we didn't already know how to work hard, but he made demands of us, and we fulfilled those demands, and it just we learned we were capable of doing more than we thought. So, for example, at that time, there was no club volleyball. As I said before, and so in the fall, he gave us these workouts to do, and we would do them in the buddy system so that we could hold each other accountable, make sure everybody was doing it. And it was just a little, they're only now renovating. I was back a few months ago and saw it, but they had a tiny little football stadium with 10, it was like cement block steps.
Yeah, I know 'em.
So you could sit on these rows, but you could also do workouts on them because they were higher than the average step. They were like 2.5 steps high.
Yeah.
And so our workout, our average workout in those fall voluntary workouts was to do 100 stadiums, which is 1,000 jumps. Wow. So we would run 20, hop 20 with 2 feet, hop 20 with the left, hop 20 with the right, and then finally hop up 2, down 1 with 2. And so 100 stadiums, 1,000 jumps of various sorts, and that would be an example of what we would do. Or he would say, all right, now you guys are running. He figured out it was about a little over a mile run. We would run from campus and have to go down on Milpas, which is one of the main ways to get into Santa Barbara. When you get in, you get in town, you take the Milpas exit, and you go north, and you're taking it towards Santa Barbara High. And so he would have us run down and touch the McDonald's and come back. But sometimes, if we were playing a weaker opponent, we would be doing that at a time when the opponent would have been driving up Milpas. So we were under orders not to drive along Milpas. We had to pop out and just touch McDonald's and then go on the back streets because we were also not in the business of humiliating our opponents.
Which Rick is
but
honorable
we had
guy.
Huge challenges there in terms of what he asked of us, demanded of us physically, and that was the number one lesson that I always carried on from Rick, and loved. Just really blessed to have a great coach in Rick Olmsted, and also other great coaches like Al Skates at UCLA, Doug Beal and Bill Neville and Marv Dunphy with USA. And Rick was the first non-family coach because my dad was my teammate and also my coach early.
By the age of 17, Karch Karai and his best friend John Henley were well versed in using a hanger to maneuver locked gymnasium doors that stood between them and getting in some extra work with their volleyball teammates at Santa Barbara High School in California. Built in 1926 by noted architect L.A. Smith, the historic Granada Theater in downtown Santa Barbara just so happened to have the same type doors. And so it was on December 14th, 1977, the Granada was premiering a movie about a visitor from outer space. It was the follow-up directorial effort of Steven Spielberg to his blockbuster hit movie Jaws. Karch and his teammates, excited to see the movie, found the side door at the Granada, and Karch went to work with his trusty hanger, triggering the door open. Only after the boys had entered and scattered did Karch find out he was in for a close encounter with security. I'm a Venice, California-born, Los Angeles-based sports fan, one that has played, coached, announced, and promoted sports my whole life. My love affair with sports started in my own backyard and has led me to this podcast. Thanks to the support of the Amateur Athletic Union in East Bay, I'm excited to bring you Sports Stories with Denny Lennon. Hello, sports historians. Welcome to Audio Video Podcast, episode number 40 of Sports Stories with Denny Lennon, the second of our 5-part series on the greatest volleyball player of all time and the head coach of the USA Women's National Team, Karch. Yes, friends, it's week 2 of a Karch July. I must say I did some good old journalistic legwork to get that story on Karch. My thanks go out to John Hanley for the backstory. I think we will let Karch finish that story during the interview. Now it's time to say hello to the producer of the top video podcast in the Sentinel Adobe corridor, the director of the SSDL5 slate of shows on YouTube, and the assistant coach of the 2000 Los Angeles Catholic Youth Organization Girls Basketball Championship team, my QP, Christine Jimbo.
Hello, everybody. I'm here to remind you to get to our website, sportstoriespodcast.com. I'm also letting you know that we have our East Bay store on our website. So you can go there, get your favorite muscle tee, get some fun sports stories with Denny Lennon t-shirts and gear. We also, sponsored by East Bay, have the 7428 shootout.
That's right, we
Now,
do.
this is a really cool thing. You got to go to Twitter. You got to get a Twitter account to get it. But there's a really fun shootout competition that benefits charity. And so we want as many people to vote and to follow at Sports Stories DL.
That's right. All our social media links are available on sportsstoriespodcast.com. My Twitter, as mentioned, at sportsstoriesdl. Little update as we go to record our intro for this. This will be published Thursday. We'll already have a result, but, you know, people got to know, so I'm just going to say it. Scott Rice, known as the Girl Dad, is holding a 75% to 25% lead over Carlos Haro of Casablanca Restaurant. However, Carlos really hasn't got his charity going quite yet. His charity is
Concern Foundation, I believe.
Concern Foundation. And once he gets them mobilized, things could turn. Still got a day and a half to make it happen.
I don't know. That seems pretty insurmountable. 75 to 25%.
Yep. But if he gets the votes going, you know, he can close it down.
How many more days to vote?
A day and a half.
Oh, boy, a day and a half.
We will see.
A little over 24 hours.
In this second installment, Karch will fill you in on that break-in at the Granada. He'll talk about his start playing beach volleyball with his dad and then graduating to Better Partners, how he chose UCLA, and when he first got his taste of international competition. I say let's get to it. It's time for part 2 of our 5-part Karch July from the USA Volleyball National Team Center in Anaheim, California. Here's our Sports Stories interview with the greatest volleyball player ever, Karch. Please note this interview was recorded on January 17th, 2020. Your dad, I think I talked to somebody, they said one of the things they'd hear across the beach was it rise and think?
Yes.
Was that an instruction that, and that
My dad
makes
had
a whole lot of sense though.
Yeah, my dad had some great sayings, and he was very vocal on the court, so that led me to be pretty quiet because I let him do all the talking.
Okay.
But one of them you would hear would be "rise and think" in his Hungarian accent, or "jump and hit that ball, Karch." And so it was great because he was a good player, and we played together for about 4 years. And much of that time, obviously, I'm just this string bean of a little kid, 11, 12, 14 years old. So the other team in beach volleyball, the beauty of it is there's only 2 players on each side. So if you and I are playing and you're somebody looks at you or looks at me, I'm a tiny little kid, and they think, oh, he's the weaker player, well, we'll serve him because he'll make the first contact, he'll pass, his partner will set, and then he'll have to hit. So they forced me to carry a huge offensive load.
Sure.
And a time when I was 11 and 12 where I couldn't even hit down. I'm just hitting it up, but trying to find, with finesse shots and control shots, try to find a way to get it to the sand. So those were, in retrospect, as challenging as it was really good for me and my development.
I understand there was something else exciting happened in Santa Barbara in 1977. It was a premiere on the West Coast. It sounds like of the movie Close Encounters. And I don't know, I talked to John Hanley about this. He said a few of you decided that you could make it into this premiere. Do you remember this at all?
You're going to have to remind me.
Apparently about 5 or 6 of you, probably your buddies on the high school team, found a way in through one of the doors.
Okay.
I think a hanger was involved.
Yeah.
And and once you got in, you realized that the theater was full.
Was full. You're reminding me.
Everybody scattered. Do you remember the rest of this?
No. Tell me the rest.
Apparently, everybody found a seat but you.
Okay.
And as security was coming, you made a John Wilkes Booth kind of leap off the balcony in order to but luckily you didn't break your leg.
Well, the best part of that story is the hanger part of that story, because John and I and our teammates, but especially John Hanley and I, were obsessed with this sport. We just fell in love with it, and we're trying to figure out every way that we could to be good at it, both on the beach and indoors. 2-on-2 on the beach, 6-on-6 indoors. And so John got to be particularly skilled with a coat hanger, and so we got to know all the gyms around California.
Oh, there it is.
Because the typical exit to a gym, you hit the bar, you push the bar, and you move out. So if you can get from the outside, if you can get a coat hanger over that handle, pull it towards you, you open it right up.
Solid.
We were not there to vandalize or to do damage. What we were there to do is just break in to play volleyball. So we figured out how to break into Santa Barbara City College, to the Boys and Girls Club, to Santa Barbara High School. And we got kicked out a lot, but we would just say,
Love it.
Oh, well, we just thought that it was open gym, because we would turn on the lights, set up the nets, the whole thing. And then we would say, well, the door was just open. The lights were on. The nets were up. And we thought it was open gym. So we're just playing it. And then so they wouldn't give us any trouble. They'd just say, get out. It's not open. But we figured out how to break into gyms all around Santa Barbara. And John was the master with the coat hanger. So
that's good.
One of his many great skills. And so it's actually cool that we're talking now, because in just a few weeks, Santa Barbara has it's like an unofficial Santa Barbara Beach Hall of Fame. Okay. Beach Volleyball Hall of Fame. The organization is actually called the FOEBA, Friends of East Beach Association. And it originally started because several years ago, one of the all-time greats, Henry Bergman, passed away. And people in Santa Barbara just said, hey, we have to honor him. Let's have a tribute to him. And so part of that tribute is they raised some funds to actually rename and give a permanent marking on East Beach and change one of the main courts there to the Henry Bergman Court.
Oh, nice.
And there's a sign on there and everything. And so they've had a few other dedications. One was to Kathy Gregory and Kathy Hanley as one of the great beach teams of all time. And John will have, in a few weeks, will have a court dedicated to him. He's the next one who's going to be to be recognized. Rightfully so, not because of his
not because of the hanger skills.
His coat hanger skills, but because of his great indoor and especially his beach volleyball skills.
And he spoke about John when I was talking to him. He talked about his sister Kathy bringing him to the beach, and then you were playing down there with your dad, and somehow that's how you guys got together. What made you choose UCLA, Karch?
Let's see, a couple of things. Number one, very few people talk to me about going to their school. So either they weren't interested in me, or they somehow figured out that I already had interest in UCLA and backed off or didn't express interest. So I really only talked to Al Skates, UCLA, and Ernie Hicks with USC. Those were the two schools I had conversations with. interested in going to a good school and a good volleyball program, and both of those offered that. But Al had done a lot of winning as the other Wizard of Westwood and ended up with 19 national titles.
Unbelievable.
I got to be a part of 3 of them, but
So
I think the other thing was just talking to Ernie Hicks. They had one of the all-time great setters at the time, eventually USA setters in Dusty Dvorak.
Oh, right. Okay.
They were running a one-setter offense, and Ernie was expressing a lot of interest in continuing to run that offense. As I was coming out of high school, I was both a setter and a hitter, more of what you would call people today call a 6-2 offense or a 2-setter offense. And Al, meanwhile, had been running a 6-2 for a long time, and there was good timing because one of their great players, Dave Albright, had just graduated, and so there was a spot open. He didn't promise it to me, but certainly he said, you have the chance to contend for this spot. And the other spot was St. John Smith. And so if I could win that, I could set a 2-setter offense and run it with one of the all-time great players, St. John, one of the all-time great beach players. And so it just seemed like a better opportunity. And Al is a really charismatic, magnetic personality and also a superb coach. And so it wasn't that difficult a decision to decide to go to UCLA, and I'm still very happy that I did.
Did you feel any of the leftover buzz from 3 years earlier, Coach Wooden being there and that basketball program? Was there any kind of because I know Coach Skates and Coach Wooden had a relationship.
Did not feel a lot of buzz. I think what if anything I noticed with UCLA is it's really hard to be the coach or coaches who come after John Wooden. And so the team was still really good, but not on the level of Coach Wooden. And so, they're still struggling today to become a consistent top 10 in the country team. And they were once John Wooden, and people don't realize how long it took him. He was there for many years before they broke through. It wasn't just, boom, he gets there and right away they start winning. They had to go through a lot of tough times and a lot of learning, himself, his coaching staff, and all of his players. So there wasn't that much in the way of Wooden. Later on, I would get more exposure to Wooden because you mentioned Al and Coach Wooden had a relationship. But another person who developed a really close relationship was Marv Dunphy because he did his dissertation on John Wooden and his coaching methods.
I read some of that.
And so Marv interviewed him. Basically, he still has the tapes, really valuable things to have now, but he still has the tapes, a whole series of tapes that he transcribed and then turned into his dissertation. But that's a really special time that Marv would talk about as those times he got to share with Coach Wooden and the process of creating the interviews and the dissertation itself.
Okay, so if I'm correct, 124 and 5 was your years.
Yes.
And 3 titles.
Yes.
I'd like. Do you know how Walton did? Because your was the golden era, let's say, of UCLA volleyball, and you just had finished the golden era of basketball.
Well,
and
I think at one point UCLA's men's team won 88 in a row or something, so they probably were better than our 124
It's
and
very
5.
close, Karch. It's really interesting. Like Walton was 86 and 4, and Alcindor 88 and 2. And those percentages are pretty close to yours. But I was going to give you a little quiz. Could you tell me who has the best in Division I sport basketball overall record? And it's a UCLA player.
Is it a male player? Okay.
And he was of that era.
Keith Erickson?
Larry Farmer.
And
89 and 1.
Wow.
Isn't that crazy?
And the numbers are lower because a lot of people forget that freshmen were not even eligible to participate. So now you hear a lot of one and done. People play 1 year and they go to the NBA.
That's right.
Well, in that time, you didn't even get to do anything. Yeah. And I remember 1 year, the freshman team beat the undefeated eventual national champion team.
That's correct.
when
correct.
they played
Yeah,
a
isn't
scrimmage
that
early
something?
in the year. That's how good this
And they were the
freshman team.
defending champs. They would go on to go undefeated.
And they beat.
and that's
that was their only loss, but it didn't count on their record because
unbelievable.
it was an intra-squad scrimmage.
That's so crazy.
We interrupt this podcast to bring you a commercial.
Sports Stories with Denny Lennon aims to bring its subscribers interesting, unique, and uplifting stories. You can find us at sportstoriespodcast.com. We drop audio, video podcasts every Thursday and go live at 5 on YouTube 4 nights a week. That's Sports Stories with Denny Lennon.
And now back to our interview.
Al Skates, I
fantastic.
heard him talk a little bit this one time, and I guess you might have been on the national team maybe as early as '79 or something. And he spoke about going to Japan for a game, and you played on the concrete. Do you remember this?
Yes.
That's wild.
In those days, the regulations in college volleyball were different than they are now. So now you have certain periods where you can train and compete and all that, and you're limited to 20 hours a week.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have periods where you have no time, and then you have periods where you get 8 hours a week. Well, in those days, there were no limitations at all. So the first day of school at UCLA was the first day of practice.
Okay.
And we would practice 5 days a week, and we would lift, and we would do everything else. I'm lucky again that there were no limitations because it made for more time for all of us to develop as players and physically. And so we had a really long season, but Al would break it up by he started taking us on foreign trips. We went to one to Taipei for a tournament in Taiwan, and another one in I think it might have been in maybe January of 81, maybe before my junior year. We went to a tournament or a series of matches in Japan. And it's a really memorable series to those of us who participated because we played against 4 different university teams, and then the 5th match was a match against their university all-star or all-American team.
Okay.
And so when we got over there, I think we struggled in the first match. We might have lost that one just because, we're barely off the plane.
Just get off the plane.
Played a good team. They certainly were better than we were that day. But after that match, there was some talk amongst the Japanese like, oh, we feel sorry for this UCLA team. They're going to get killed. If they lost to that team, most of the teams are going to be better. But we went on, I guess 2 things stand out. Number one, we just kept getting better and better and better. And so we won against the other 3 existing college teams. And then we get to the final match, and we played in the same gym that the Tokyo Olympic Games were held in, on a concrete floor.
It was enclosed?
It was enclosed.
But a concrete floor.
What
the heck?
And so it was amazing to play in the same venue, getting goosebumps again, as the birthplace of Olympic indoor volleyball.
64.
Which we're in the year 2020, where we're going to go
back.
Where the Olympics goes back for the first time.
That's
but
awesome.
the Japanese brought indoor volleyball into the Olympics.
They did.
For both men and women. So a lot of people don't know it, but that was the first women's team sport to enter the Olympics before soccer, before softball, before basketball, before rugby, field hockey, anything. Volleyball was the first
So that would have been a
women's
thrill to
team
be in that
sport.
venue.
So it was a thrill to be in that venue. We start out the match, and we're getting killed. It's freezing in there because they don't believe in a lot of heat. There's a real Spartan kind of warrior attitude about it. The guys on the bench have their sweats on and our sweats on, the guys on the court, because it's so cold. You could see your breath in there. And if a guy had, less hair, you would just see steam coming off the head. So we get killed like the first one 15-2. Next one it's closer. But Al, I'll never forget, he never relented in terms of his belief that we could win this match, and we were supposed to get killed. And so we chip away, we start blocking them. This is side-out volleyball, but in the fifth one, we stuffed them probably 11 times and beat them 15-2.
Well, he says the spark
amazing.
was you actually diving on the concrete, making a play, and then getting up and putting that ball away, and everybody like just fed off of that, that you went ahead and laid out on the concrete, and now it's time to go.
That was really fun series, and fun to get to see how the rest or some part of the rest of the world would do it. It's a real eye-opener to see great players playing a very different style of volleyball than we played.
Sure.
But a great clash. And then the other thing I remember from that trip was we were having some struggles in serve receive. And so at first we just started doing it a little because I was still in this two-setter offense. And so in the front row, I helped pass a little, but I would start backing up and covering for somebody else. And so then Al kind of liked that. And he was like, yeah, you know what, Karch, why don't you take more and more and more court? And so eventually that led to, with USA, our two-passer formation.
Because Al was your coach.
Well, Al wasn't my coach with USA, but I had a ton of experience taking,
Karch,
being a receiver of serve. He encouraged me and encouraged us to have our best passers basically take a huge area. And that prepared me really well for USA because we eventually went to a strictly two-passer formation. Before there was jump spin serving, you couldn't do that in these
Not today.
days.
But now, concurrently, what was interesting at UCLA, you were playing in a lot of beach tournaments. And and Al encouraged this, was okay with it, Coach Skates?
Well, he had a history of lots of great beach volleyball players there. Mike Norman, Jim Menges, Kurt Kilgore. I mean,
you're forgetting some, but there's just a ton.
A ton. So I think Al loved it because now his guys are playing year-round. They're playing beach all summer, and when they get to school, UCLA starts a little later on the quarter system, but they get to school in September. And from day one, they're back indoors, and they have a whole long lead up to the season, which the competitive season starts in January. Finish in May, right back to beach. And so I think he loved the fact that guys were touching a ball and playing the game two different versions of the game they needed to play, and giving their bodies a break in the summertime on the softer sand. So it's a nice change and good for their health.
Now, you certainly got a lot of repetitions coming into playing beach from East Beach, but I would imagine once you got to Los Angeles, and is that where you and St. John decided to go ahead and play in some tournaments?
Yeah.
And that's a formidable pair, but you're still young enough that the older veterans, I'm sure, are looking to beat you guys.
For sure. Going back a little, I just want to give my dad some credit for one of the great gifts he gave me. When we were playing, I was 11, all the way up till about 15, we were a team, and I couldn't think of it any other way. But at some point, and we never played in opens. Some people would enter the Manhattan Open just to say, I lost 15-1 to Ron Von Hagen or Jim Menges, or I got hit in the face by Ron Von Hagen or Tom Shamalis. We didn't want to enter just to enter and get beat like a drum. So we wouldn't enter. We would go watch some of them, but we would never enter. And then the Santa Barbara Open was coming up. A great local player, he wasn't a AAA player, but he was a very good local player, named Rich Payne, asked me to play. And this is the first time I had to think about, well, wait a minute, the only guy I've ever played with is my dad, and I don't know what to do. So I go to my dad, Laz, and just say, okay, Rich has asked me to play. What should I do? And it's a really special gift. He just said, you know what, Karch, you're getting way too good for me. You need to move on. If you were to stay with me, you would hold back your development. So you need to play with Rich. played with Rich. We had a great tournament. There were a number of amazing matches. We were unseeded and beat some teams and eventually played Mengus and Lee, the best team on the at that time in beach volleyball. And it was an incredible experience, but it happened because my dad encouraged me to move on. So then we go forward to playing with St. John. So then I started moving on to partners, and one year I asked St. John to play, but I was still a pretty scrawny kid and not anything that might at first glance impress somebody as somebody who could win opens. And so St. John was committed to playing with his brother Andrew that season, and I played with some other people. But eventually we both realized, and I approached him again, and we could be a good team. And so we won every tournament we played that year.
Wow.
We won a ton. So that was 1979, and he's to get to play with St. John, one of the all-time greats in beach volleyball, was phenomenal, and I got to play with many others along the way, like Mike Dodd and Tim Hovland and Ken Steffes and Adam Johnson and Mike Lambert and Kevin Wong, and the list goes on.
The Superstars was a made-for-television competition in the 1970s and 80s that pitted elite athletes from different pro sports against one another to find out who was the best all-around athlete. Yes, in these times, athletes were not quite making the money they do now, and they jumped at the chance to prove themselves, earn some extra cash, and score a free vacation. In 1985, Karch Karai led a group of Olympians against NFL stars, and never have those of us that love volleyball been so proud. I'm a Venice, California-born, Los Angeles-based sports fan, one that has played, coached, announced, and promoted sports my whole life. My love affair with sports started in my own backyard and has led me to this podcast. Thanks to the support of the Amateur Athletic Union in East Bay, I'm excited to bring you Sports Stories with Denny Lennon. Hello, sports historians. Welcome to Audio Video Podcast, episode number 41 of Sports Stories with Denny Lennon, the third of our 5-part series on Karch Karai, the GOAT of the sport of volleyball and the head coach of the USA Women's Olympic team. From the response we've received so far, it appears you have very much been enjoying what we are calling a Karai July. Parts 1 and 2 and plenty of other contents always available at youtube.com/Sports Stories with Denny Lennon. Volleyball for men had not always been given a whole lot of respect as an athletic endeavor outside of particular areas of the United States. And when Karch had rolled over the competition in the Superstars show in Miami to close in on the Superstars title, a lot of people's minds were blown. He had lifted weights, swam, played tennis, and rowed, and then it came to the 100-yard dash. And whomever did better between Karch and the New York Jets' 5-time All-Pro defensive end Mark Gastineau would win the overall title. And wouldn't you know it, Mark freaking Gastineau, all jacked up on performance-enhancing substances, blew by Karch to win first place. Don't take my word for it. Listen to what Karch has to say on this episode about the championship that got away from him some 35 years ago. Hey, before we go much further, we need to say hello to the producer for the top video podcast in the Sentinel Adobe Corridor, the director of the SSDL5 slate of shows on YouTube, and the liaison for the 2014 Dominican Republic Youth National Team that won the championship of the AAU Girls Junior Volleyball International Division, which was held in Orlando, Florida. My QP and everybody's favorite liaison, Christine Jimbo.
All right, everybody. That's a good one. You pulled from the archives for that one.
Yes, I did.
Ooh. All right, I'm here to talk to you about your social media links. Find all of them on our website at sportstoriespodcast.com. Be sure to check out the East Bay store where you can find official SSDL social distancing masks.
That's right.
That will be made available to you.
Mm-hmm.
Especially check out the Twitter social media at SportsStoriesDL to vote in the East Bay 7428 shootout.
Yep.
To see the competition, the videos, the reactions, including trash talk from one Randy Rosenblum. Whew.
lit it on fire.
It's fantastic. If you
Gaslit it.
haven't seen it, you got to go check it out at Sports Stories DL on Twitter. Also, I'm here to tell you about exclusive behind-the-scenes content, sneak peeks, and Denny's commentary, which is always hilarious, at Patreon. Hilarious. At patreon.com/Denny Lennon, and you can go to our website for that link as well.
Yeah, that Patreon behind-the-scenes look. We're going to put the Box Cobbler content up there. He's huge. He's killing it. I also introduce you to some of the new correspondents that are going to be part of the Sports Stories with Denny Lennon's staff. Some other fun stuff. So, yeah, as you mentioned, patreon.com/Denny Lennon or our website.
Yeah, if
Twitter.
you want to see how Denny sets up the shot with Buck
for
these things, that's definitely going to go behind the scenes on Patreon.
It's big. Kick it out, Buck. Content will also be there. Hey, an update on the East Bay 74-28 shootout as we go to do this introduction for Karch 3. Winners in the opening round of the 12-team single elimination tournament are #GirlDad Scott Rice, Hall of Fame sportscaster Randy Rosenblum, and Loyola Marymount athlete and attorney Wayne Boley. So those have all moved in. There's one more in the opening round of the 12-team bracket, and that's going to pit the Heroes Movement Mike McKay and the athletic director from Sierra Canyon, Rock Pillsbury. So you go watch the videos, and you get to vote in each round one time, and it's at Sports Stories DL. I have noted that Karch transcended volleyball as a player in the 80s and 90s, and he moved into pop culture. A hidden gem of the cinematic world is a 1986 movie called Spiker, not to be confused with the 2007 horror film Spiker about a pink-eyed albino serial killer. This Spiker is about the formation of the USA national volleyball team under a demanding coach, and it was filmed just prior to the '84 Olympics. Think of the iconic movie Side Out, but set in a gym of the National Training Center in San Diego. One of the starring roles was played by Patrick Hauser, and it was based on none other than Karch Karai. Hauser was a much better actor than volleyball player, especially when you see his approach and net violation in the opening scene. Okay, why is it that movies and television depiction of volleyball always includes net violations that aren't called? The actual '84 Olympic team of men's volleyball were background players, and there's some great action shots, including ones from the real Karch. It's available on Amazon Prime Video if you'd like to take a look. Besides Superstars and Spiker, Karch talks about training camp for that '84 team in San Diego, their epic victory over Russia in the spring just prior to the Soviet boycotted '84 games, and how somehow Karch was nominated 4 times for the AAU Sullivan Award, but came up empty, just like the Buffalo Bills did in the Super Bowl. So let's get to it. It's time for part 3 of our 5-part Karai July from the USA Volleyball National Team Center in Anaheim, California. Here's our Sports Stories interview with the greatest volleyball player ever, Karch Karai. Please note this interview was recorded on January 17th, 2020. One of the things interesting when you bring up like Dodd, Hovland, and then throw Sinja into that, what was the dynamic? So once you graduate UCLA and then you go to the national team and you're going to train for the '84 Olympics. So Doug Beal's coach. And was there a mandate you couldn't do both? You couldn't do beach and indoor right now, or something along these lines that those guys either didn't try out for the team or can I never was clear on how come those guys weren't on that team.
Once the USA men moved to San Diego early in 1981, the year-round National Training Center set up camp. It moved from Dayton, Ohio, out to San Diego. And so in the summer of '81, the summer of '82, in May of '81, a number of us went down to a big tryout. Sinjin, Tim Hovland, Mike Dodd, Steve Sammons, me, Steve Timmons, Pat Powers, lots of really good players, amazing players. And we all made the team. And so we spent some time with the team, and then a number of us who were still in college would go back in the fall and then look to plan to go back to USA. But Doug made it very clear that we were ranked 19th in the world at that time. And we had so much work to do. He did not think that us spending a lot of time playing beach volleyball was going to get us where we needed to go. We didn't take very well to that. We resisted it for sure, because we felt like he was, I don't know, caging us in. We normally had weekends off, but he kept us so busy. And we were traveling and competing a lot, so we didn't have a lot of chances to play. But in the rare ones that we did, I maybe played 1 or 2 tournaments in 4 years. Looking back on it now, I think Doug made the right call, because we won the gold medal in 1984. And we had a lot more learning and developing to do as an indoor team than as a beach team. A lot of us had played a ton of beach volleyball. The other thing he said was, I am demanding, once you are out of school, I'm demanding a basically a complete commitment to this program. So you can't be with the program part-time and go play a summer of beach volleyball and expect to come back. That's a big part of our season. We're busy at that time. So you're either with us or you're not. You also can't go to play in Italy or in some of the other professional leagues and expect to come back. So some of the guys just had other interests, wanted to go play overseas or play on the beach and play more part-time, and that was not acceptable to the program. Those of us who stayed with the program committed on a full-time basis, and the others were not able to do that.
And like you say, the 84 was an unbelievable moment for the sport of volleyball to see that happen. And one of the things I found interesting is, one of the things was, well, the Eastern Bloc countries weren't there, but you had just beaten Russia. And you had done particularly well, like 36-8 or something, against all the other formidable teams, right? So you'd proven yourself over and over again, and then won that gold in 84, and that had to be quite a moment.
It was an amazing moment, but it was not the strength of the tournament that we wanted it to be, that anybody wanted it to be. The best team in the world for 7 or 8 years had been the Soviet Union. And they were still the number 1 team in the world. Yes, we had beaten them, but the story behind that match, we went to a 4-match series with them in May of 1984, just a couple of months before the Olympics. And it was either May 8 or May 9. I don't have the date straight. It was one of those 2 days. But we're playing them in the first match of this 4-match series. And we're pumped because we're in this battle, and it goes back and forth, and it eventually goes to a 5th set, and we win. And it's the first time in 16 years that the USA men have beaten the Russian men.
16 years, wow.
So we're going crazy in the locker room and thinking, oh my gosh, would this be amazing to get to play the Russians in the finals, in the gold medal match 2.5, 3 months from now. Would be incredible. What we didn't know, and we heard it at first, but we didn't believe it, but based on some information we learned later, as sometime that evening, the Soviet Union announced their boycott of the Olympics. So I think what happened, with the best information I have, the Russian men's team, some of them might have learned about that boycott before the 5th game, in the break between the 4th and 5th game. However it was, whether they learned about it before the 5th or after the 5th, right after the match, Doug Beal learned about it, and he didn't want to tell us right then, because we're going nuts in the locker room just thinking we're on our way. We're close to arriving now. We just beat the number 1 team in the world on their home floor. They were crushed, the Russians. Felt awful for them. They were a good bunch of guys. We got along with them, had a huge respect for mutual respect between teams. But then we just beat them like a drum the next 3 matches, because now they were not able to compete, no matter what lineup we put out there. But Doug learned right after that match and did not tell us in the locker room, told us, we had a team meeting the next morning, and he let us know. But the tournament was fantastic. We won. We were thrilled. It was higher than our expectations. Our hope was maybe to get some kind of medal of any kind, but also it was not a full field, and that's why some of us decided to stay for another 4 years so that we could play a tournament that was truly the ultimate test and did not lack the Soviet Union, Poland, Cuba, and some of the other great men's teams.
Which was, of course, 88. Now, it's those years between 84 and 88 that I found that volleyball entered, and obviously I'm of the age where I'm involved in it, I love it, but it seemed to become part of the popular culture a little bit. One thing that we took particular pride in, those of us who are in volleyball, was your performance in the 85 Superstars.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that it legitimized a lot of volleyballers to go, yes, we're athletes, right? And do you remember that competition?
I do.
Yeah.
I think there are a couple of things. Number one, I remembered watching the Olympics as a 15-year-old in 1976 and staying glued to the TV hour after hour, day after day, waiting for volleyball to show up because I wanted to see the Soviet Union. I wanted to see Poland. I wanted to see people I'd seen in pictures, these high-flying Cubans, Wojtowicz and Skorek and these great Polish players. And basically, nothing ever came on. And so that's when it hit me, okay, I think the only way volleyball is going to get on is if the U.S. is good enough, A, to qualify, because the U.S. wasn't even competing in that Olympics, and B, is a contender, like in the medal round. In the medal rounds, or has a chance to be in the medal rounds. So that was one of my big motivations. That's when I learned as a 15-year-old, made a goal for myself to, can I help this team? Can I be a part of something that helps it be good enough to qualify for the Olympics and good enough maybe to medal?
And 10 years
so
later.
Then we compete in LA, and some of the early ratings came in, I think, and they were good, and people were like, what is this? We've never seen this before. And Steve Timmons, spectacular with his red flat top, and this team, like, where did they come from? And the women's team with Paula Weishoff, Debbie Green.
I remember, well, I guess, I'm 4 years, younger than you, but that lit everything on fire.
For sure.
Because I watched the Olympics religiously, too, and I do remember having that thought, like, we don't even have a team in here.
Yeah, and so they showed,
8 years later
ABC
from when you made that.
showed a bunch of it
in
1984.
We interrupt this podcast to bring you a commercial.
Sports Stories with Denny Lennon aims to bring its subscribers interesting, unique, and uplifting stories. You can find us at sportstoriespodcast.com. We drop audio, video podcasts every Thursday and go live at 5 on YouTube 4 nights a week. That's Sports Stories with Denny Lennon.
And now back to our interview.
That's wild.
Those two teams didn't actually have to qualify because we were host. You get an automatic berth. But both teams had great Olympics. A little weakened because of some teams lacking. But the women, I think on a Friday night, won the first medal any U.S. team ever won, the silver, lost to China in the gold medal match. Right. And then we beat Brazil the next night. And so all of a sudden we broke on the scene, and people were like, where did this come from? This is not the thing we're used to playing in the backyard until the hamburgers are cooked, until they're ready to eat. And so we just showed them, both teams showed them what international class volleyball is all about. And that got, things like that got us invitations to things like the Superstars.
Did you feel a little of that weight in the Superstars?
I felt a ton of weight. I felt like I have to rep our sport, our volleyball community there. So it was actually not that fun. I was trying to do so well. Everybody else is kind of goofing around, but I was like, hey, this is our only way to measure up.
Yep.
And so, and I was a last-minute entry. They didn't invite me at first. Somebody pulled out, and we were playing in a series in Brazil, and they got a hold of me down there, and they said, can you get here on Monday? So I think we got home on Monday morning from Brazil. After I'd said, yeah, I'd like to go to the Superstars, and I took a quick golf lesson for half an hour because I never played golf from my father-in-law, my wife's dad, Jim Miller. Went up to UCLA, got a quick weightlifting lesson and a quick swimming lesson to try to learn how to do a flip turn. I tried one, and I went like sideways, and he was like, don't do a flip turn. Just touch and go that way.
That's what you did. Oh, hilarious.
And so, because I knew those were events. You
and people
choose
forgot
7
these
out
were
of the
really
10.
important back in the day, the Superstars, because that's
massive.
faded into time because these are multi-million-dollar corporations, these players now. But then
it was a deal.
Big deal.
All the NFL stars were there.
Yeah.
The only, it lacked a lot of baseball guys were there. Of course, in February or whenever it was, January, basketball players couldn't go. And of course, they're some of the most phenomenal athletes on the planet too. So no basketball, but everybody else. And ended up tying for first place there. But losing, rightly so, that was the tiebreaker because in the events that I did, the 7 out of 10, Mark Gastineau, the defensive lineman for the New York Jets, beat me more head-to-head than I beat him. I was laughing. I learned some good form because you had to take
you did.
You had to take, I had already done this lift, but I just wanted to get a few tips at UCLA before it took a red eye that Monday night with my wife Jana out to the event in Florida. But you just had to take a bar and get it over your head.
Yeah.
And so the football guys are like, and they just push it up. And instead, the only way I could do that is all legs. Like your arms aren't doing anything. It's basically the jerk of what you would see a clean and jerk in the Olympic lift, where you have to get the bar here and then get it over your head, and it's all explosion in your legs. So I was able to use that to get third, and but hung tough.
I'm going to correct you. You got second.
Sorry, tied for first, and then third in a later one.
But
Karch, I remember, another thing in the swimming. There was some confusion at the starting line, and I thought somebody took off early, and so I waited for a second, and then they didn't have a second gun blow for the false start, so like, holy crap, I better go. So I don't think I took a breath all the way down, all the way back, but ended up not trying this flip turn, just touch, got back, and so I won, and that helped me get some extra points during the competition.
If you could have been 0.3 faster in the rowing, you would have got enough points to beat Gastineau and been the Superstar champ, Karch.
Well, that's when I knew something fishy was going on, not in the rowing, but in the 100-yard dash, because here's this monster.
He was really fast.
And part of it was the performance-enhancing activities.
Yep.
So, but I thought I did pretty well running a 10.8 in the 100-yard dash.
You were moving.
He killed me. Like, how is a guy that tall and that large, that massive of a human being running a 10.5 while I'm running a 10.8?
That's wild you say that because I just was watching it the other night, and I went, wow. Okay,
it wasn't even close.
Yeah.
He just killed me.
There's no way.
I'm thinking, I'm glad I'm not a quarterback having that run at me because he's just going to kill me with one hit.
I love that. So the other thing that kind of crossed over around the same time into popular culture, I don't think it got wide play, but it was really interesting, was that movie Spiker. I thought that was really interesting. That was the same facility you guys trained in.
Yeah.
That didn't look like that nice of a facility in San Diego.
Nothing special.
But all you guys were there, and then they just had 3 actors that they threw in there?
Yes.
Or something like that?
This was really interesting. Dusty Dvorak's, I think his father-in-law, I'm sure I'm going to get some facts wrong, but his father-in-law was small, like a documentary or movie producer. And so he got an idea, like, why don't we loosely create a story that's loosely modeled on the USA men's team and their adventures and how they have to travel all over the world, and they started and they're not very good, and they go through all this adversity and they get better and better and start really contending with the world. So they got a few actors, real actors, and then the rest of us. And so we spent, several weeks in December of 1983 before the '84 Olympics. And we would practice some,
so
and then we all had to stay after to help them film the volleyball scenes.
Yep.
And you don't see us in the background really, but we were snickering and giggling because the volleyball scenes, it was horrendous.
Yep.
They had a little guy, C. Thomas Howell or something like that, and he's trying to jump and look like he could jump. They put a mini tramp out there, and he's jumping and he can't swing, and they're trying to do a coach on one because those were really tough, and having him dive around.
The coach on one was supposed to be the central theme, and that was
exactly.
painful. That was painful.
And so we were just thinking, oh, God, this is not going to come out
They
well.
patterned that one guy after you.
Yes.
Ketch Vitelli.
Ketch Vitelli was his name. So they had guys who were loosely modeled off of all
Hilarious.
of us. What ended up happening is, like, Dusty eventually had to take over so that we weren't just taking 4 hours to get 3 good seconds of volleyball. Dusty basically took over as unofficial director of this thing, at least of the parts that we had to do.
It wasn't bad overall because those 3 guys got in the way, but for the most part, it represented volleyball not bad. Like I remember watching and going,
I think it
okay.
did because it was the USA team that went on to win the gold medal.
Yeah, it was.
Unfortunately, the movie wasn't so great, and so it came out for just a few days, only lasted in a few San Diego theaters, and then disappeared. So it is like a volleyball cult classic now. You've got to dig up
Amazon
Spiker.
Prime is carrying
dig it up. Spiker.
It's all right.
Side Out is another one. And, of course, they're making a new Top Gun soon. But Top Gun had some great beach volleyball scenes in it with the blue jeans and the tight white T-shirt.
That's the one that's always referenced when people reference stuff. You got married in 86.
Yep.
And I didn't mean to blow over that, but the Sullivan Award, of course, I'm connected with the AAU. And I think you were nominated 4 times. Mm-hmm. So you're like the Buffalo Bills of the Sullivan Award?
Exactly.
Volleyball players were getting no love.
There's a great 30 for 30 on the Bills. I think the 4 seasons of Bill or something like that. So the 4 seasons of Karch.
Do you remember who won those years?
I think Greg Louganis won one of them. Maybe Flojo.
Flojo was one.
I don't remember all of them.
Like Joan Benoit.
Yeah.
Jim Abbott.
Yeah. Jim, fantastic guy. Love him.
What a good guy.
They're all good people.
They were. Now, was that in Indianapolis when you went to those?
Yes.
And it was. Those are pretty.
Actually, I think a couple of them were in Chicago. I remember one because my wife Jan and I had to pack. It was an odd packing trip. We were going to the Sullivan Awards in Chicago, and it's like -10 outside and a fierce wind blowing. Froze our tails off just walking across the street, and then we had to go straight from that to Brazil in
where you could just shed all the clothes.
The peak of summer, where it's 114 outside and 98% humidity, because we were going down for a volleyball tournament.
In 1994, Kurt Stevenson, wearing his trademark pink Speedo hat and his tank top, took his considerable talents to a famous Los Angeles beach where movie stars roam, and Mitch Buchanan runs a team of lifeguards that keep everybody safe and sexy. Kurt, teaming up with Tim Sinclair, was no doubt a favorite to win the Malibu Pro Beach Volleyball Championships. The real question was, could he act? I'm a Venice, California-born, Los Angeles-based sports fan, one that has played, coached, announced, and promoted sports my whole life. My love affair with sports started in my own backyard and has led me to this podcast. Thanks to the support of the Amateur Athletic Union in East Bay, I'm excited to bring you Sports Stories with Denny Lennon. Hello, sports historians. Welcome to Audio Video Podcast, episode number 42 of Sports Stories with Denny Lennon, the 4th of our 5-part series on the icon of sport that is Karch. We hope everybody's doing well during these unprecedented times we now live in, and that they're enjoying our presentation of a Karch July. Parts 1, 2, and 3, as well as plenty of other content, is available at youtube.com/Sports Stories with Denny Lennon. Could he act? I mean, this guy could do a lot of things, like win indoor volleyball gold medals and dominate the world of pro beach volleyball. He was a highly intelligent man who proved himself a man of honor. No, he couldn't act. Sadly, Karch's portrayal of Kurt Stevenson would win him no awards. However, before we go much further, we need to say hello to the producer of the top video podcast in the Sentinel Adobe corridor, the director of the SSDL 5 slate of shows on YouTube, and the third place medal winner from the 1987 Amateur Beach Volleyball California Classic, my QP for life, and the bronzed babe, you see bronze, the bronze babe of the video podcast world, Christine Jinboot.
Thank you for that. Like I said, I really am not a big fan of third place.
Well,
if you're not first, you're last. That's what Ricky Bobby's father said.
Made the medal stand,
in
so
Talladega.
That's
All right, so I am here to tell you to find all of our social media links on sportstoriespodcast.com. I want to especially point you towards two links. Number one is the East Bay store, which is now open, and it will soon have social distancing masks featuring the SSDL logo.
Whoa.
Look out for those, yeah. Absolutely. The
People
second
will keep their distance from those.
Oh,
Yeah,
I hope not. I hope they're close to the masks and
Yes.
distancing from people. So the second place I want to point you to on the website is Patreon. If you'd like to be a friend of the show, go ahead and click that Patreon link on the website for exclusive behind-the-scenes look at our shows, at box cobbler content, at the East Bay Shootout. Tons of fun stuff. I especially like the photo shoots with Buck. Well, not to mention Kick It Out Buck's going to be there as well.
Strong
so
stuff.
all of it can be found at patreon.com/Denny Lennon or on our website, sportstoriespodcast.com.
My Twitter is at SportsStoriesDL. Little update on the East Bay 7428 shootout. I'm sure you were wondering what that's event. Well, this event, it matches up SSDL video podcast guests that were interviewed here at the 7428 studio. So these particular 12 guests took a pre-interview basketball shot on the backyard hoop. Those shots were then ranked, and now they're matched up against one another in a 12-team single-elimination tournament where the winner is determined by voting on Twitter. The championship team, now a team includes the guest and their charity, the championship team of the event, which concludes on August 7th, will receive a $1,000 East Bay gift card for the charity. The quarterfinals are now starting, and they include, let's see, who do we got? Chris McGee, the Laker broadcaster, is the number 1 seed. He's going against the number 8 seed, Scott Rice, #GirlDad. The 2-time VBC champ, Mike Boley, will be taking on the one and only Hall of Fame sportscaster Randy Rosenblum in the next quarterfinal. Oh, man, that's big. The John R. Wooden Course creator, Lynn Guerin, going against the LMU athlete and lawyer Wayne Boley. And our fourth quarterfinal game will pit Rock Pillsbury, who came strong with that Sierra Canyon group. The athletic director from Sierra Canyon came strong with his community in an upset win in the opening round. He'll be taking on Hall of Fame ring announcer, the legendary Jimmy Lennon Jr. So those are our quarterfinals. Should be some fun. If you want to take part, you go to Twitter at SportsStoriesDL. So as we continue on, you'll see in this episode we further examine Karch's pop culture appeal. So he adds to the run that we learned about in the last episode, where he should have won the Superstars title in '85. He was the inspiration for Ketch Vicelli in that 1984, movie, Spiker. And now we look into Karch. We're going to ask him about portraying Kurt Stevenson in an episode of Baywatch, where Karch's partner is none other than Tim Hovland. Yep, the Hov. Never thought you'd see the Hov and Karch playing together, but you watch this episode of Baywatch and you will. They play against Kent Steffies and his partner, Matt Brody. Now, Matt Brody, of course, is played by actor Davis Charvet, who would use this beach volleyball-themed Baywatch episode platform to springboard the following year and win the Celebrity MVP Award at the 1995 Santa Monica Beach Volleyball Classic. That happened. True story. Everybody, you can look that up. But back to Karch. He was more than an actor, We explore the vital parts of his life, like choosing to leave the national indoor team and play professionally in Europe, mixing in pro beach volleyball, and we learn the origin story and the evolution of that pink hat. Let's get to it. It's time for part 4 of our 5-part Courage Alive from the USA National Volleyball Team Center in Anaheim, California. Here's our Sports Stories interview with the greatest volleyball player ever, Karch Kiraly.
What do you think is bigger, St. John and Magnum or Karch and
Ooh,
Baywatch?
it's going to be a good poll question. That's all I got to say. Please note this interview was recorded on January 17th, 2020. You win the 86 World Champs, and that springs you into the 88 games, where now everybody's there.
Yes, and the 86 World Championships indoors, we finally got to play the Soviet Union, our friends the Russians, in an actual final for the first time. We had beaten them the year before in the World Cup, but it's a round-robin tournament, and so we played them early and won all the matches.
And then won all the, and you don't have
and
like
hung
the
on
playoffs,
to win.
yeah.
But it's nice when you get to a final round, and so we beat the Soviet Union for the first time to win a major tournament. First time ever.
Playing for Marv Dunphy.
Playing for Marv, and great players like Pat Powers and Dusty and Bob Stavertlick and Steve Timmons and the whole crew. So a number of us then decided to go on and still play in another Olympics because we'd wanted to play in an Olympics that had as many good teams as possible 2 years later. And
that's a great win, of course, that you'll always remember in the 88 finals.
For sure. Again, playing the Soviets.
Yep.
Eric Sato coming in off the bench and hitting his gnarly jump spin serve. Jump spin wasn't a very familiar sight at that time. Now in the men's game, almost everybody is a very hard jump spin server, but Eric had a special one, really compact. But Marv would bring him in at the perfect time, and he was uncanny in his ability to score points for us.
What now? Right after the 88, you're going to go over to Europe and play in Italy for a couple of years.
Not right after.
Not right after you started playing more beach at that point?
A couple of years after. It still wasn't allowed. A lot of people don't know this.
Okay.
The demand was still, you're a full-time player or you're not. And if any of us wanted to go play professionally, the choice was, you can go play professionally, but you will no longer be on the USA national team. That's not the rule now, and everybody splits their time. So all the guys on the team now, I don't know, Max Holt and Matt Anderson and Aaron Russell and the crew and the women, they're all playing all over the world in club for professional club teams right now. But the old rule used to be you cannot do both. It's one or the other. And so some of our great players just couldn't say no anymore to the increasing offers that would come their way. So after we won the 86 World Championships, some of the people who just could not refuse those great offers, Dusty Dvorak, Pat Powers, Steve Salmons, decided to go start playing in Italy, understanding that they could not come back to our team, even though 2 years later during the Olympics, they were still at their prime. We just couldn't have them on our team anymore. So we're really lucky to have great players step in for them. Jeff Stork as setter, Doug Partee in the middle, and Steve Timmons moving to the opposite position. And so we were able to carry on, but we were forced to lose some players who just had to think about their financial future too.
Sure. And was that a consideration?
And so then the rule changed, sorry to interrupt, in 1990, around the time that I had already retired from the team, and then Steve Timmons and I got a really nice offer from a team in Italy, so we decided to go. But right around that time was the time the rule changed, and now you could go play professionally and then come back in the summers to play with USA.
And you came back in the summers to play more of the AVP.
Correct. I was focusing on the beach by then.
How did the pink hat become your symbol or your defining?
At the time, I think this was around, when would it have been? Maybe 1992, something like that. I had a sunglass sponsor, Ray-Ban, Bausch & Lomb company. And so they gave me some hats to wear. They didn't make any, this was really the beginning of performance eyewear. And so I couldn't play in Wayfarers. I mean, those are great to hang out in, but if you get hit in the face with Wayfarers on, I don't know what's going to happen. So those were out. So the way I would identify the sponsorship was to wear a hat, and they sent me 4 colors. Of course, those were in the days when optic colors were all the rage. So they sent me lime green, optic yellow, black, and like hot pink. And so I tried the black, and that was frying my head in Florida, just absorbing too much heat. Tried the yellow and the lime green, and then just decided, all right, I'm going to try this pink one this weekend. And my partner Ken Steffes and I won that tournament, so I figured, all right, well, I'll go another one. 13 tournaments later, we won 13 in a row. So then it was total superstition.
That explains
and then it became tradition. And then finally, it was just this albatross on around my neck. Like, I can't not do it anymore. It's like, what do you get, a free bowl of soup with that hat? It was so bad, it was good in a way. I got heckled mercilessly for that one. I remember one was, hey, Karch, this was a great one. The 80s called, they want that pink hat back. So that was nice. A good one. That was well into the 2000s.
Nice.
But,
now
I know someday it's going to come back.
It's already, it's circling.
We interrupt this podcast to bring you a commercial.
Sports Stories with Denny Lennon aims to bring its subscribers interesting, unique, and uplifting stories. You can find us at sportstoriespodcast.com. We drop audio and video podcasts every Thursday and go live on YouTube Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Many guests have shared their stories with host Denny Lennon, such as Super Bowl and BCS champions Brendan Ion Badejo, Peter Boulware, and Trevor Lawrence, three-time Olympic gold medalist Karch Karai, Kentucky Derby winner Doug O'Neill, NCAA champions Toby Bailey and St. John Smith, Hall of Famers Jimmy Lennon Jr., Rudy Tomjanovich, world champions Boom Boom Mancini and Tim Leary, AAU Sullivan Award winners Catherine Plummer, Sabrina Ionescu, and Spencer Lee. We've also had best-selling authors Wesley King and Wayne Coffey, and our Sports Stories favorite, Norm Bass, the first African-American to play 2 professional sports post-World War II. Become a friend of the show on Patreon, and you can help keep the dream alive. Go to patreon.com/Denny Lennon or go to our website to see all of our social media links. If you have an interesting, unique, or uplifting story to tell, contact us on sportsstoriespodcast.com.
And now back to our interview.
There's a guy who played in the Malibu Open by Kurt Stevenson.
Mm-hmm.
Remember this guy?
I do vaguely remember Kurt.
I'm tricking you here.
It is an episode of Baywatch.
yes. I wanted to see if I could catch you off guard.
It was classic because we were talking about it a couple of years ago, and one of the great members of our USA women's coaching staff or women's national team staff, our performance analyst, technical coordinator, Jeff Liu, was like, really, Karch, you were on one of those? Like 3 minutes later, he's a master at searching and dug it right up on the internet, so we played it for the team, and they were just cracking it up at my horrendous acting skills.
And Hovland just played
3
himself.
lines.
Hovland
was Hov.
He's just played himself. It was hilarious. And that David Charvet can play a little bit.
He did.
He's good.
And he could, At that time, he helped make some very legit volleyball scenes.
He was good.
He would play in a lot of like pro-ams.
That was the one we did in Santa Monica.
He
played in that one.
He
crushed on everybody. He was really good. Yeah,
like Tom Selleck, who was our honorary team captain, a very legitimate volleyball player.
Magnum's my guy.
Yeah. Which
is the only thing, St. John's got on you. He was in an episode of Magnum PI.
Absolutely.
He's got that on you.
I don't have acting skills. I have some volleyball skills, but don't count on me.
He was killed off
more than about 2 words.
He was killed off.
2 words is probably too many for me.
So then, if you don't mind, the Atlanta, we moved to Atlanta, and now you're playing on the beach. And did you have to qualify via the World Tour at this time, or was it because the entry was a host country?
There were 2 routes to qualify for the first ever beach volleyball Olympics. One was to play on the international tour, which is now the only route.
But
in its infancy, everything was not as clear as it is now, understandably, because it's the first time. And a lot of us were committed to playing a very intense and full-time, from March to end of September, early October AVP season, 25 events and all around the country and really good players.
Sure.
And so most of us decided, well, we don't want to leave our tour and stop supporting this American tour. We want to continue its growth and try to fuel it by having the best players there. Some teams left and so did not compete on the AVP anymore. Carlos Briseño and Jeff Williams were one of those teams, and the best of those teams was St. John Smith and Carl Henkel. And so that led to a lot of disagreements and bones of contention because we had so many good AVP players. We felt like they all deserved a shot to be there, but the route was if you were really good on that tour or the best American team on that tour, you got straight in. So St. John and Carl got straight in that way. And then the rest of us went through as far as I'm aware, the only Olympic trials that's been held.
Yeah.
And it was in Baltimore, of all places. And so it was a really fierce tournament. All these great players, Scott Akatubby and Brian Lewis, Ricky Ludes and Brent Frohoff.
Much more difficult route.
Yeah.
And it was almost like the track or swim trials where you have to be good on that trials.
Yes, you do.
Or
you
not
don't
a cumulative thing. Yeah.
And so Mike Whitmarsh and Mike Dodd had a great trials. They actually won the trials, even though we didn't play it out. They won the winners bracket, so they were already in as one of the top two finishers.
Okay.
Didn't play the finals of the tournament because they were already in the finals of the tournament. And then and they beat us, and so Kent, Steffes, and I had to work our way through. We got a huge break at the end because Randy Stoklos sprained his ankle in warm-ups in one of the late matches, and so we beat Randy and his partner Adam Johnson pretty easily, thanks to Randy not being at close to full form, and ended up competing in the Olympics. And so we were lucky. We had three American teams.
American teams.
St. John and Carl, Mike and Mike, and Kent and I.
And nobody really understood outside of that wasn't paying close attention to beach volleyball, that whole backdrop on the qualification, which made that game that you guys had in the first round of the playoffs, I think, against St. John take on a different level. And then some justification for American domestic play by you guys playing in the finals against another American team.
It was probably one of the most intense matches, if not the most, that I played for sure. Again, there was a lot of political disagreement between the AVP and the FIVB, disagreement about the way we qualified teams, disagreements about lots of things. And so a lot of us were really frustrated that a third AVP team couldn't be in that event.
Right.
I was popping off too much and, downplayed what kind of a team St. John and Carl were, basically saying I'm not sure they even belong to be here, or maybe I would just say they don't belong to be here. They don't belong in this tournament because they avoided the trials, but as it turns out, they played a great Olympics and did deserve to be there, contrary to my opinion. And we ended up battling them, and Kent was just the star of the Olympics and carried me to victory there. We weren't playing our best game, and a lot of it was thanks to Carl and St. John playing so well. But we squeaked one out, and we were really happy to, because our hope and plan all along was if Mike and Mike, our good friends from the AVP, Mike Dodd, Mike Whitmarsh, and we could keep winning, we wouldn't meet each other till the final, and we could have an all-AVP, All-American final. But if we had lost to St. John, that would have screwed the whole thing up.
Wow.
We barely squeaked that one out. It was a great win with a lot of layers of stories underneath it.
There really was.
And people still call it one of the classic beach volleyball matches of all time. I think you can find it on YouTube. But then we ended up playing Mike and Mike in the final, and it was fantastic. We didn't even really want to have a winner. We just were so happy to play each other and show the world that at that time, the Americans are the best in beach volleyball.
Did it hit you prior to or after that suddenly now you're the guy who won 2 indoors and a beach gold? Did that whole conversation come through your head at all prior to that? Did you see where that would be a unique historical type of thing?
I wasn't thinking about it at the time. I think as time goes on, it's probably going to be a little more difficult to win a gold in each discipline. And soon there's a lot of work to try to add snow to that. So now can somebody win snow, beach, indoor? But I think the ultimate would be, and of course this is going to happen, or I hope it happens someday, to blow all the records away, is I would love to see somebody, male or female, be so good that they're both on their indoor team and beach and win gold at the same Olympics. To work out the schedule just like they do for swimmers, you know, how Michael Phelps, they figure out how to set the race the schedule so that they can contend for more.
I'll put Catherine Plummer up for that, but I bet the
Who
Olympic
knows,
women's coach might not want to have their player playing.
Maybe not me, but you know, if somebody's good enough, think of Misty May.
Sure, she could
completely dominant indoors, willed her team to an undefeated season and an NCAA championship in 1998. Didn't spend much time indoors, enjoyed the beach a lot more. And her 3 golds, also playing in Sydney and falling short of a medal there. But somebody like Misty May, maybe a setter, something like that, I could see potentially
somebody like that, yeah.
Somebody so good and so valuable to her team, indoors and beach, that I could see a coach being open to that.
Leaving your family, then flying from one airport to another, grabbing a rental car, heading to a big convention center to do some marketing of materials is not anybody's idea of a good time. That is, unless you get to do that with the greatest volleyball player ever. I'm a Venice, California-born, Los Angeles-based sports fan, one that has played, coached, announced, and promoted sports my whole life. My love affair with sports started in my own backyard and has led me to this podcast. Thanks to the support of the Amateur Athletic Union in East Bay, I'm excited to bring you Sports Stories with Denny Lennon. Hello, sports historians. Welcome to Audio Video Podcast, episode number 43 of Sports Stories with Denny Lennon, the 5th and final part of our series on volleyball great Karch. Karch July has come to an end, and we want to thank everybody that's reached out to us to let us know they've been enjoying the series. Remember that this, as well as other episodes in all kind of series, all of our episodes, is available at youtube.com/sportsstories with Denny Lennon. So about 15 years ago, Karch's representation company was also promoting a junior beach volleyball program I was running. With all forces combined, they promoted and planned to run the U.S. Open of beach volleyball, of which Karch was the primary spokesperson. Karch and I traveled to big indoor volleyball tournaments across the country, making sure the junior players and their parents, the adult coaches, the administrative people, that they were all aware of these qualifiers out there of the U.S. Open of beach. And then Karch would do a Q&A. People would geek out to talk to him. They would marvel at his stories and also marvel at his amazing recall. We should say hello to the producer of the Top Video Podcast in the Sentinel Adobe Corridor, the director of the SSDL 5 slate of shows on YouTube, and the 1997 New Mexico State Academic Honors Night medal winner. It's my honor to present my QP, Christine Jimbo.
Good one. All right. I am so smart. SMRT. I am so smart.
Oh, it doesn't fit.
It doesn't go over your headphones.
No. Bummer.
All right. Okay, everybody. Head to the website. Head to the website, hit all of our social media links. You can find YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, you name it, especially Twitter, to take your votes for the East Bay 7428 shootout. Also, 2 major links I want to point you to on the website. Number 1 is our East Bay store, where you can find socially distancing masks. Is that what they're called? We're calling them?
I made that up.
I thought you did. Anyhow, so you can have Sports Stories branded social distancing masks at the East Bay store or on our website. The other link I want to push you to on our website is our Patreon link. If you want to be a friend of the program and support us and help us keep doing what we're doing, go there. But you really do get a lot of good stuff there. You get exclusive behind the scenes footage, super fun things.
Box cobbler.
Box cobbler.
He's cool.
Yep, definitely. And exclusive footage from a lot of different episodes that you'll like to see, as well as vlogs and host commentary, all sorts of fun stuff.
Yep. Yeah. Everybody needs to take a look at Randy Rosenblum's tirade after his first round victory. Boy, that guy's a lot of fun. Hey, follow me on Twitter at SportsStoriesDL. That's where you follow the East Bay 74-28 shootout. We're now in the semifinals. The Final Four, baby. A $1,000 East Bay gift card goes to the winner's charity. That's at stake. Go check it out and vote at SportsStoriesDL. It's easy to understand why people would geek out to interact with Karch. I mean, 2 indoor volleyball Olympic gold medals and another on the beach. He racked up the most tournament wins in beach volleyball history and was still playing at the highest of levels into his mid-40s. He transcended both indoor and beach volleyball. From inspiring the character of Karch in 1984 to what should have been a Superstars title in 85 to portraying, whoever could forget this role, Kurt Stevenson on Baywatch in 1994. Karch was huge. His legend continued to grow as he got into coaching, of which we'll learn about in this final episode. Before we get to it, I want to make mention of beach volleyball historian Art Kovian, whose multiple works have supplied us with plenty of information. Finally, a heartfelt thanks goes out to the one and only Karch for taking the time to do this extra long-form interview and help all of us take this fascinating look at his extraordinary life. Hey, let's get to it. It's time for the final episode of our 5-part Karch July from the USA Volleyball National Team Center in Anaheim, California. Here is our Sports Stories interview with the greatest volleyball player ever, Karch. Please note this interview was recorded on January 17th, 2020. On the beach, Karch,
Would love to see that.
How did you continue to maintain such a high level of play into your 40s, even winning your last tournament at 44? I remember the way I took pride when you showed that volleyball players are good athletes in the Superstars competition. I went, wow, okay. You see, Vaughn, my son, those of us in our 40s can still play.
The first half of my beach volleyball career, I was able to rely, as a lot of guys, certainly wasn't the only one, but I was able to rely not only on a lot of experience and a lot of volleyball IQ, but a lot of physicality. Good jumper, could hit the ball hard, could endure the challenge of tournaments. People don't understand what was demanded in that day compared to now, where you might play one match a day over 5 days. This was grueling. It was 5 or 6 hours of volleyball on Saturday with breaks between, and it could be 5 or 6 or 7 hours of volleyball on Sunday leading up to the final. It was an incredibly demanding sport in terms of endurance that is not part of beach volleyball now. So then the second half of my career is I was on the maybe on the downward path and not at my physical peak anymore. I enjoyed a new challenge of how can I endure this test. I'm not jumping as high and hitting as hard as I used to, but can I figure out other solutions and answers? And so that was a great test. I remember playing with Mike Lambert, another great player and teammate and friend that I enjoyed playing with. And by that time, maybe 2004, I'm 43 years old, and every single ball in the tournament is coming to me. So maybe I'm having to receive serve and hit off of Mike's Mike's set, 325, 350 times a weekend. So I would spend a lot of the week just recovering from that. But it's just it was a pride thing of can I handle can I bear that burden? And so I prided myself on trying to be in the kind of shape that was required to handle that. And so I just kept going until my body finally said no, but my mind could have kept going. I still loved the game, but at some point my body just couldn't take that kind of demand anymore. And I trained really hard, harder than most other players in retrospect. Maybe I should have backed off a little on that, and I wouldn't have been in such pain by the end, but I just needed to end the pain.
I remember watching you. I went down one time, and I was down there to cheer on the 40-something, and your right shoulder, I think, you either torn something, and you played left-handed, and I still think you took a third or a fourth. And it was unreal. You were attacking left-handed and in your 40s, and I was like, wow.
And you know who else did that? Carrie Walsh, and she was amazing hitting left-handed.
And that was,
she went through some of the same things, and she has done. Hats off to Carrie. All she's done with 5 Olympics already, a 4th indoors, 3 gold, a bronze, and looking for more in this 2020 year. But she and I both had some injuries, and one of them was shoulder-related. And so early in the 2004 season, playing with Mike Lambert and having a great time playing with him and with his fire, I dove for a ball and landed on my side, and my shoulder basically dislocated but got stuck in this position. And so I had the trainer come out and pop it back in. But so Mike was like, all right, let's shut it down. We don't need to push through this. There's still more than half the season to go. And so I said, nah, Lambo, why don't we just try it a little? I don't want to just give up here. And so what we did is, because I played the left side and he played the right side, if we put me over there, he could be here, and now he's right-handed, and the serve could come to me, and I could just put it up, and he could just crush it.
That's right.
And so we switched sides, and I just put him on 2 every time, and we
So
ended
good.
up beating a couple of teams.
So good.
And I think we got second in that tournament. Beat Dane Blanton, who went on, I think, later that summer to play at the Olympics.
Karch, that is wrong.
And Jeff Nygaard. But so then I went and we came home. I think that was in New Jersey maybe. So we came home and had the doctor look at it, and he said, you're going to have another surgery. You can do it now, or you can do it at the end of the season. If you decide to keep playing, you can. You won't do any more damage, except you cannot swing hard. If you swing hard, if you take a normal swing again, you'll have a very good chance of dislocating it.
You just leave the arm on the beach.
Leave the arm on the beach, exactly. Detachable arm. So I said, Lambo, what do you want to do? I'm having a great time playing with you, but I don't want to be like an anchor and just drag you down, or an albatross. So what do you want to do? You want to, here's the way we could go. You could break up with me right now, go get a new partner, a healthy partner. We could try it a little bit, and if it's a disaster, I'll check out and you play the rest of the season with somebody else. Or we could just say, why don't we just keep trying all through the end of the season? What we ended up at is, let's try it a little. So Mike and I end up deciding, let's give it a shot. Let's try another let's just take it tournament by tournament. And so I think one of the next tournaments was San Diego, a little harder packed beach. And so I could jump a little higher and just kind of tap the ball around. Much more right-handed than left-handed. I didn't do much left-handed, but tap it around and see if we could do it, what we could do. We ended up winning. And so I think we won 3 times that summer.
Wow.
One of them, I don't know if it was the same summer that we won
Was
Manhattan. It might have been. Mike won his first Manhattan there.
Okay.
But we knew that if things went badly, we were both open to the thing of, okay, we'll just shut it down and I'll have surgery. But we ended up playing together for the rest of that season.
That is something else.
Yeah.
Now, around the time, I think you and I were doing some promoting for Beach at these big convention centers, where you liked how I would park the car in the taxi zone. It's about the time you got into coaching. And I think in the prompt was your son's team had a particularly underachieving season.
Yeah. our boys went to a great school, a smaller school in Southern California. There are 5 divisions, basically based on strength or school size. Division 1 has most of the best teams in the boys' Southern California volleyball community, high school. And then Division 5 is the smallest school division. So it's certainly not the level of volleyball of Division 3, 2, 1. But still, our boys decided to play volleyball in high school and in middle school. And it was fantastic. The first we didn't push them into that at all, but when they decided to play, we're like, great. So one was in 9th grade, Christian, and one was in 8th. And the 8th grade team, the middle school team, did okay, had a reasonable season. But in that same season, most of the guys on the varsity, because there were just not many people in this school, were freshmen. So they had a lot to learn. They were really young. And they had a very tough season. They lost every match. So I think it was like 0-31 in matches. But not only did they lose every match, they lost every set of every match. So they were something like 0-90 or 93. It was a really rough season. One of them, my wife and I, and a lot of the parents went to cheer them on. At that point, we're just hoping that they would win one set. Near the end of the year, they were actually up 20-10 in one of those sets, and we're thinking, all right, it's finally going to happen. It didn't happen. They lost. So I asked the school if I could get involved and do to help them.
And they asked you what you knew about volleyball?
Coach, and they asked me what I knew about volleyball. And they were kind enough to let me become involved with the program, and the guys worked really hard in the next preseason. And now both boys are on the team because they're in 9th and 10th. And it's just one of probably my proudest coaching moments that after getting beat like a drum and basically not having won a set in almost 2 years because they were 0-for in the previous season, come out in the first match of the next season to a team that had killed our St. Margaret's team, and they won. It was something like 25-19, and it was awesome. The
just
kids
went crazy.
It was like they'd won the Olympics, won the gold medals. And so then it was like, hey, guys, calm down. If we could win one of these, maybe we could win another.
What do you know?
And they went on to win the match and have a nice season, qualify for playoffs, win a playoff match, and then next year advance further. Next year advance to the finals and lose in the CIF Division 5 finals of Southern Section. And then finally, that last year, when one son had graduated, the other was our setter as a senior, they won the whole thing. So it was a great lesson for me, but especially for them. So powerful that they took this program that lost everything, lost every single set, and the work they put in and how they were able to transform a team that was struggling so much and take it to the very top.
We interrupt this podcast to bring you a commercial.
Sports Stories with Denny Lennon aims to bring its subscribers interesting, unique, and uplifting stories. You can find us at sportstoriespodcast.com. We drop audio and video podcasts every Thursday and go live on YouTube Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Many guests have shared their stories with host Denny Lennon, such as Super Bowl and BCS champions Brendan Ion Badejo, Peter Boulware, and Trevor Lawrence, 3-time Olympic gold medalist Karch Karai, Kentucky Derby winner Doug O'Neill, NCAA champions Toby Bailey and St. John Smith, Hall of Famers Jimmy Lennon Jr., Rudy Tomjanovich, world champions Boom Boom Mancini and Tim Leary, AAU Sullivan Award winners Catherine Plummer, Sabrina Ionescu, and Spencer Lee. We've also had best-selling authors Wesley King and Wayne Coffey, and our Sports Stories favorite, Norm Bass, the first African-American to play 2 professional sports post-World War II. Become a friend of the show on Patreon, and you can help keep the dream alive. Go to patreon.com/Denny Lennon or go to our website to see all of our social media links. If you have an interesting, unique, or uplifting story to tell, contact us on sportstoriespodcast.com.
And now back to our interview.
Do you think that experience with the lower level high school team, in the lower enrollment, lower division, helped you become a better coach once you were coaching at the highest levels?
I think so, for sure. And one reason I think that is it taught me a lot about patience, for sure. I think it was the best possible place for me to start coaching, actually, is with a team that wasn't like at an international level. Most people who've had great success as a player in that sport don't translate to good coaches. The norm is that the ones who are really good as players and teammates and help their teams win a lot don't make good coaches, because it's hard for them to have the patience and understanding that what was easy for them is not easy for others.
Sure.
And a lot of it is they played so much, it's very intuitive. They may not necessarily be able to easily explain what they did so well or transmit it or teach it. So I think it was great for me to start my coaching career working with some total beginners, because at a small school, anywhere around the country, the normal rule is if you go out for a sport, you make a sport, because they're just hurting. They need bodies to play, to actually be able to field teams. And so got to work with some total beginners and got to get exposed right out of the chute to some parent issues, which was awesome. I thought I was immune from that. No. That's
Hey, Coach.
Exactly. Well, hey, Coach, you don't know what the heck you're talking about here. Who are you? Coach. So anyway, those were all really valuable lessons for me.
That's something.
And helped me swim against the tide and try to be a better coach, even though I had a lot of success getting to play with so many great players and teams.
I want to be respectful of your time, but because of I wanted to spend time on your playing career.
Yep.
Because I just think that that's what really set so much of our country's volleyball program on fire. That said,
Yep.
I think most know that you moved into the head seat for our women's team, won the World Championships in 2014, and bronze medal in 2016 in the Olympic Games.
Yep.
And here comes volleyball back to Tokyo for 2020, and that's really exciting.
It sure is. I am incredibly fortunate and grateful and blessed to be working with this program for so long. First, as an assistant to Hugh, big thanks to him for giving me an opportunity. My only experience was basically coaching the St. Margaret's boys team. Our boys joke about, well, of course that's the route to coaching the national team. You just coach the St. Margaret boys varsity team. Makes perfect sense. So got to coach with him for 4 years, do a lot of learning, and do a ton more in these essentially close to 8 seasons now with as head coach of the USA Women. But I love working with the people in this program. The players, the athletes are a really special group of women. I wish the country knew more about them, especially girls club volleyball. We have so many amazing role models who are intelligent, disciplined, hardworking, powerful, amazing people who also happen to be great volleyball players. And we have an amazing staff. So it's a great program to be associated with. We've had some really nice results. We would like more. And the big one that still sits out there is no USA women's team has ever won an Olympic gold medal. The USA women have won 3 silvers, 2 bronzes, but in all the years of international volleyball, beginning in 1952 with the first ever women's world championships of indoor volleyball, the USA women have won a number of medals, but only 1 gold medal, and that was the 2014 World Championships. So we're hungry for more. we don't do our work every day in here thinking gold medal, gold medal, gold medal. We think got to get better, got to get better, got to get better. Haven't been good enough, haven't been good enough, haven't been good enough. But that's okay because we're going to be hungry to be better tomorrow and next week and next month.
That's brilliant.
Ranked number 2 in the world right now, but there are a lot of great teams who are going to be at the Olympics. It's going to be a really tough deep field. China, Serbia, Italy, Japan, Russia, Brazil, and so there are a lot of contenders there. If the pools break out the way we expect, because Olympic qualification just ended recently, just days ago, we think we're going to have a really tough pool. I think that's the best possible thing that can happen for us because we'll be battle tested and most prepared for the knockout playoff rounds when we
that'll be so
get there late.
exciting. That's going to be exciting. So I'm going to ask you a series of rapid-fire questions to wrap us up. If you got a set, Karch, you ready?
Yeah.
Best opposing player indoor you played against?
Alexander Savin, great international middle for Russia.
Beach. How about on the beach?
Beach. Sinjin has to be right up there.
Best teammate indoor?
Best teammate indoor. Loved playing with a lot of them, but Steve Timmons was amazing.
How about on the beach?
Kent and I did a ton of winning, but I also had a great time playing with Sinjin, Adam, Brent Frohoff, Scott Akitabi, Mike Lambert, and finishing with Kevin Wong, among others, all great teammates.
How about this? As a coach, well, actually, I'll go to the rapid-fire questions.
Yep.
Okay, here we go. Your first pet?
Never had a pet as a kid, but we got dogs for our boys, and it was a mini dachshund named Kobe.
Nice. First car?
Datsun B210.
Favorite sports team when you were a kid?
The Minnesota Vikings, because I love purple.
Nickname?
The Purple People Eaters.
The Purple People, yep. What was your nickname as a kid?
In high school, they called me Captain K or the computer.
Favorite board game?
Monopoly.
Favorite main dish?
Main dish. Anything my wife makes. She's a fantastic cook.
Favorite dessert?
Favorite dessert. There's a great key lime pie at a fish restaurant, of all places, in Dana Point.
Nice. Favorite movie?
Favorite movie? It's a Wonderful Life.
Favorite musical group?
Favorite? Let's see. One of them probably has to be the Beatles.
Favorite author?
Favorite author? Dennis Prager.
Favorite professional athlete?
Who?
You can exclude your team. Go with actually.
One of my favorites is actually Al Order, 4-time discus gold medalist.
Wow. Okay.
4 straight. I admire greatness over a long period of time.
Where did you meet your wife?
Through volleyball. She played at Pepperdine. I played at UCLA.
What was your first date?
First date. Let's see. Think I took her out to dinner in Malibu because she was going to school at the time.
Okay. What's your favorite word?
Learn.
And if we want to end on your favorite quote.
Favorite quote. I think one of them, and I can't repeat it or recall it verbatim, but there's a great one from Teddy Roosevelt about the man in the arena, and the man with or the woman with dirt all over them, and they fail and they fall down, but they're in the arena and in the battle.
That's right.
And it's much more admirable to put ourselves on the line than it is to be a spectator and be a critic.
Awesome. Yep, I love that quote too.
Awesome.
Thank you, Karch.
Thank you.
It's been awesome. Sports Stories with Denny Lennon is supported by the AAU. Find a local event and join at aausports.org. And remember, you can catch your favorite amateur sports live stream, replays, and highlights at ballertv.com. Sports Stories, along with East Bay, supports the Heroes Movement, a nonprofit that bridges the gap from mental or physical therapy to getting strong again through strength and conditioning workouts. This free service is available for any veteran of the United States Armed Forces. Visit heroesmovementusa.org for more information. Sports Stories, along with thousands of people across the country, also supports the My Stuff Bags Foundation, a nonprofit that provides traumatized children with new belongings and new hope. Learn more at mystuffbags.org. Sports Stories with Denny Lennon is a production of Sports Stories, Inc. and is available on Apple Podcasts and YouTube or wherever you listen and watch. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and give us a review. It really helps spread the word. You can find all our social media links, archives, and other info on our website at sportstoriespodcast.com. Special thanks to the John R. Wooden Course and Wooden's Wisdom. Original music for Sports Stories is courtesy of Lennon Music Productions. Original images by Sienna Lennon Photography. Sports Stories is produced by Christine Jimbo and Marley Rice. Sports Stories is edited by Bob McCall. Additional staff include Ray Castro, Teresa Dolan, Jake Downey, Carlos Haro, and Buck Magic Lennon.
Come fly with me, let's fly away. Let's watch sports stories from here into the day. Come fly with me, let's fly away. Come fly with me, let's float up, it'll be true. We'll watch sports stories because it's for me and you. Come fly with me, we'll fly out to the blue. Sports Stories with Denny Lennon.
Check it out, Buck!